Hello everybody, my name is Luca Iandoli and I'm Associate Professor of Computer Science at the College of Professional Studies, St. John's University. And I'm here with my colleague and mentor, Giuseppe Zollo. Giuseppe is a professor at the University of Naples Federico II in Naples, Italy, where he teaches in the program of graduate and undergraduate engineering management. The topic we will address today is based on work and research that Giuseppe and I are doing on the link between creativity, design thinking, and how these ideas can be applied to entrepreneurship. We have three basic points we want to make. First of all, we want to give you a metaphor or a comparison. So the first point I want to make is entrepreneurs can be considered as artists. Although this is controversial, there's a little bit of debate about the difference between these two types of people. What we think they have in common is that they deliver new meaning through the design of effective artifacts. The second point we want to make is that we want to give you a different perspective to this topic. And this perspective is based on recent findings in neuroscience about the way our brain perceives beauty and how we can apply this to the design of better product. And number three point, which is also the third part of this presentation, is we want to propose you a sort of method to think and act as an artist and apply this working method to the design of effective artifacts. So, as I say, entrepreneurs are often compared to artists. We have distilled like 8 personality traits, if you want, that they have in common. First of all, they tend to have a pretty big ego. They have the courage to challenge the status quo because they have a vision that they want to implement, to realize. They are often driven by passion and curiosity. And this, together with their competence, makes them very creative. They have a very strong sense of achievement, and they are not shy when it comes to experiment with new designs until they reach the desired outcome. So let's start our trip into creativity and design. The first thing we want to discuss with you, and it's a very fundamental concept for this module, is the role of aesthetic pleasure. The role that aesthetic pleasure plays in the way we make choice and make decisions.
The girl with a pearly ring was painted by Vermeer around 1665. The girl looks innocent and chaste, but at the same time teasing, and her eyes seems to flirt with us. The painting raises more questions. The more we interrogate it, who was the girl? What was her relationship with the painter? It's unlikely that the girl with the modest attire was the owner of a valuable pearl earring. Who gave it to her? And so on, many other questions. What makes this painting extraordinary for us is that it is very ambiguous. This ambiguity is the primary source of aesthetic pleasure. And we want to persuade you that this extraordinary experience of beauty is essential to understand and grow our creativity. In the rest of this part, we will try to answer 3 key questions. Why? Sometimes ambiguity and ambiguous representation attract us. And what we can learn from the experience of beauty and how we can use this knowledge to improve our creativity and be more innovative in our entrepreneurial endeavors. The starting point is the power of imagination. The central question is why art exists, why humans feel compelled to express themselves in artistic way. Somewhere between 70,000 and 30,000 years ago, Homo sapiens developed the ability to visualize in external representations the content of their imagination. They learned a very important thing. They learned to imagine situations that they never lived, to simulate behavior, to predict the consequences of actions. The prehistoric art of Paleolithic caves is the primordial evidence for this new fundamental capability of the human being. And we know that by means of this arbitrary creative act, art discloses the hidden potential in the world and offers us a new possibility to order the world. Art helps us to develop cognitive skills that are necessary to face the complexity of the environment and help us to increase our ability to live in this environment and to generate new ideas.
So what we have found out is that we are able to generate new ideas when we understand and resolve complexity. This is an interesting relationship between creativity and our ability to deal with complexity. But the most interesting aspect is that we are very effective in this when we are able to integrate rational and emotional thinking. So to give you a quick idea what I'm talking about, let's do a little experiment together using some famous paintings. So this one is what you would define a very simple representation. So this is a marine landscape by Carlo Carrà, and you recognize all the elements here: the beach, the shed, the tree, the sky, the ocean. Let's make it a little bit more detailed. You would define this a little bit more complicated because there's much more detail. So this is another landscape by John Constable, Wivenhoe Park, and it's a beautiful representation of the English countryside, and you can see how realistic it is. So it's more detailed, but it's still easy to understand because we are familiar with this type of representation. So we can analyze all the details, we can understand how they are related and what they are. This one is a little bit more problematic. You can still see the details here, and you can still realize the detail. But in order to understand the meaning of the whole picture, you need to know more about the story that this painting is narrating. And this is actually the Fall of the Rebel Angels, painted by Peter Bruegel the Elder. What happens is that, this is a story from the Bible, the angels that rebelled against God were thrown out by the paradise, and during their fall, they are actually going into a metamorphosis. They are changing from divine creature into monstrous being, which are the devils. And this process of metamorphosis is happening as they are falling. And so they start to exhibit very strange features, mixing animal and human characteristics. How about this one? This one is really puzzling. This is a Jackson Pollock painting. It's called Number One. It's an example of abstract painting. You can try to understand this painting trying to go into the details, but you would never find a meaning in this way because it's just very intricate. So how do you deal with this complexity? The only way to dig into this complexity is, for this one in particular, to suspend your rationality, to stop to be analytic, and then just try to record the emotion that this painting is producing in you. So what is the problem with complexity? We may end up being like this gentleman in this painting by Norman Rockwell, who is observing a Pollock painting and probably is not understanding much because he's trying to apply his traditional knowledge, his pre-existing knowledge, to the analysis of something that is completely new. But when the complexity is very high, when the object we are observing is very novel, we cannot use our pre-existing knowledge. So that's the link between complexity, emotion, and creativity. Complexity pushes us, forces us to be creative.
And creativity is just that. The idea to avoid to be paralyzed by complexity, and is the courage to accept the challenge of complexity and the ability to find a new order in a complex experience. By accepting the challenge of complexity, the artist makes some discoveries, which are essential for developing creative abilities. The first discovery is ignorance. The second is the discovery of the ambiguity of experience. The third one is the discovery of necessity to invent a new world. And the final discovery is the discovery of ourselves. So we start with the first discovery, the discovery of ignorance. Observe this masterpiece of Venetian geography. This is the last great medieval map. Fra Mauro drew it in 1447, based on Ptolemy geography and of several accounts of Portuguese and Venetian travelers, including Marco Polo. The other map is about 40 years later. You can admire in Modena, Italy, at the Estense Library. Between the two maps, there was the discovery of America. And you see in the left part that the boundaries of North or South America are just sketched. But what is the most surprising part of this map, that Africa and Asia appears to be quite empty. On the contrary of the map made by Fra Mauro, where Asia and Africa are filled by cities and news about the population living there. So, where is the knowledge of Fra Mauro in this new map? It just evaporated. Humanity has uncovered ignorance. And within 2 generations, the medieval knowledge of myths, legends, traditions, and superstitions will disappear. Mankind start to build knowledge no longer on tradition, but on the experience. And to develop our creativity abilities, we have to learn this lesson. We have to abandon our certainties, our myths. We must face reality with the idea that the reality is an enigma to be deciphered.
The second discovery is the discovery of ambiguity. So you might have noticed that creativity tends to flourish in certain places in a very abnormal way. For instance, Van Gogh and Picasso had to go to Paris to develop their art. Leonardo da Vinci lived in Florence and then in Milan. Raphael and Michelangelo worked in Florence and then in Rome. And you can name other cities in the modern world, like New York, for instance, where creative people tend to gather. What is special with these places? So, for diverse circumstances, these cities ended up to be the center of creativity in their own time. By an unusual concentration, an amazing concentration of genius. This concentration created the critical mass for a mix of ideas that eventually determined the birth of the new. The tensions between the old and the new of the word, the conflict, the discovery, In those places, artists basically learned to deal with ambiguity. They understood that reality can be analyzed by multiple points of view, using multiple theories and approaches. And in the end, every artist, at least the great ones, were able to forge their own perspective and their own synthesis of this novelty. So this is the lesson learned. And so this is why even today, creative people and creative companies learn to experiment and also manage ambiguity and multiplicity as an opportunities for innovation. In other words, in order to be creative, you need to live and choose to live what we call the age of chaos.
The third discovery is the discovery of the style that is of innovation, a proper language. Look at this painting. This painting was made by Monet in the last 2 centuries, and it is a fleeting image of poppies, a field of poppies with a lady and a child. And if you look carefully, you don't see many details. Just you see the sketch of the lady, the sketch of the poppies in the background of the green. But those indistinct images are very important because you don't lose time and attention to look at that. You just get the feeling of a general impression of this wonderful day. And Monet didn't paint the lady and the child. He painted the joy of this day in the country. To transmit this experience, the artist had to reinvent his perception of reality through a new language, the language of the Impressionists. They were not interested in details, they were interested in the context. And they were able, with this kind of approach, to give you a new idea of the reality.
So the fourth discovery is what we call the discovery of the self. So the question is, for whom did, for instance, Caravaggio paint? And Van Gogh and Monet and all the other artists, were they really painting for the client, the patrons, the owners? Of course, these people had an influence on them, but they primarily painted for themselves. What is special with the great artists is that they express the encounter between their own inner world and the external world in a very effective way. And in the end, what the biographies of most creative individuals, being like entrepreneurs or artists or scientists sometimes, what these biographies have in common is basically 2 things. These people start from their passions and they do things because they enjoy to do those things in the first place. The second trait, and this is maybe the most important difference between artists and the rest of us, is that they never stop learning skills to transform these passions into innovative outcome. This slide concludes our first part. In the second part of the module, we will explore creativity from the point of view of neuroscience and aesthetics. And basically, we will show you that the creative process is about introducing the right amount of complexity in design. We call this ideal level of complexity effective complexity, and this would be the subject of the next module.